Palworld is the sensation of the moment. As usual, I don't jump into these games right away, but the fact that it is on Game Pass and it is a genre that I usually like made me go on and click on it. And isn't that, despite everything, I was hooked immediately? I don't really like getting involved in survival, crafting, base building games because I know that most of them get me hooked immediately. In Rust, I lost almost 1500 hours. In Valheim, I stopped playing at 80 hours. In Grounded, I forced myself to stop at 50 hours, among so many others that invariably grab me, that at a certain point I can't understand if the games are really good or if I'm the one who likes to punch trees. Usually, each one of these games has something that gives it a particular touch, and Palworld is no exception. Although everyone talks about the obvious comparison with Pokemon, and the fact that we hunt little monsters that later become part of our party, for me the biggest peculiarity of the game is that it can imitate every other game in the world and around it, has lots of flaws and is still extremely fun. As soon as we enter the game, what stands out is the clear copy of the starting moments of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and this copy continues throughout the game, whether in the way they try to organize the world to explore, or in the different biomes, whether in the way they reward the player, the organization of dungeons, the use of gliders, or even the way they organize semi-random encounters with enemies during the game. That's not the only thing we notice right away, but, and I admit I'm going to be a bit far-fetched, the game being in Unreal Engine makes our character's graphical palette and even the way it moves very similar to Fortnite. I imagine this is more linked with the game engine and the assets used than a purposeful imitation, but even so it seemed to me very similar-ish. The next comparison will be with Valheim, with the way we discover and open the map, with the heavy investment in a PvE structure, and of course, finally, with Pokemon, as it is undeniable that catching monsters that then fight with us was inspired by it. Even considering all these imitations, what Pocket Pair managed to create is original. I already wrote about this, but more and more games are copies of other games, especially in the AAA market. And it is in this indie world that these tests of combinations of genres are carried out to see what results of it. For more than many reasons, Palworld is a risk, but it showed the viability of the Pokemon formula outside the traditional Pokemon formula. And it seems clear now that it is that then the fans want from the franchise. Something I can explain is the fact that Pokemon fans complain that their game has stagnated and criticize this one so loudly, as it will probably lead to immense innovation with spin-offs from the original game, and for someone who isn't a fan, that is my case, it even made me look at the genre with different eyes. For those who think that Palworld is limited to hunting monsters, I regret to inform you that it is not that part alone that made the game popular. It was the interesting combination of genres. Exploration is fun and rewards the player who does it. The difficulty progression is satisfactory, which gives a purpose to the usual grind of these games, as we fight with increasingly stronger pawns. And if we want to capture them, we have to evolve our skills and our party. The focus of the game becomes exploration and not the repetition of tasks, since this part, to a large extent, can be left to our pals who, ruggedly speaking, are also our slaves. The possibility that the game offers us to dedicate ourselves to doing what we like the most is commendable, But even so, it doesn't make it robust enough to be played non-stop without getting bored. The truth is, like all games, at a certain point we get tired of things and start to notice all the problems with it. Palworld has 3 distinct graphical palettes. Our character has a cartoon style similar to Fortnite. Our pals have a cartoon style similar to Pokemon, and the entire world has a more washed out cartoon style with repetitive assets, with many of the textures having a horrible detail, completely out of touch with the rest of the game. I could say that they were in places in less accessible locations, but considering that I'm talking about a game with such a massive exploration component, all players will come across horrible textures several times throughout their campaign. I will not stop here. The number of bugs and glitches is enormous, as well as exploits that can be used and are difficult to fix. It's very common for our pals to get stuck on something in the base. There are pals that don't work the way they should. Spawning within the scenario is quite common. Structures appearing within structures is like an everyday job. Bosses becoming static in the middle of a battle has happened to me a few times. The way the NPCs create their pathway also leads to funny glitches where we end up finding a huge tangle of pals in some recess in a wall. Twice I fell under the ground. If we use a flying pal to explore, there are times when the biome only recognizes that we enter it and spawns pals and enemies after we stop using that bird. Anyway, I'm certainly forgetting lots of them. Practically everything has been said about this game, but the focus on its controversies, not on the game itself. Palworld is fun. Palworld is a good survival crafting base building game that had the brilliant idea of adding the component of catching monsters and automating most of the boring grind. Unfortunately, we live in the extremes. Palworld is not an expensive game. It doesn't have microtransactions, and even if they stop developing it in the way it is now, it's perfectly worth the price they ask for it. It is likely that for many it will be their first encounter with this genre, and this will create some strange moments for the player. But for someone who has played a lot of this, Palworld is a safe game to play for 50 hours and having fun. The hook of catching monsters makes the game more dynamic. The ability of changing our party multiple times makes me understand that the fruits of our labor are worth it, and the game loop doesn't make it feel like a simple tycoon in which we collect stuff just to have more stuff, but rather we evolve what we have to gain access to new areas. Just go out and play it. Don't be afraid. Go on. See you next time, guys. Bye.